The rain hammered against the cracked asphalt like bullets. Seo Junho stepped into the alley behind his nightclub, the neon lights from the main street bleeding red and blue across the wet ground. He'd heard something, a sound that didn't belong in his carefully controlled world. His hand moved instinctively to the knife at his waist as he walked deeper into the darkness. The music from inside the club throbbed through the walls, but out here, everything was silent except for the rain. Then he saw it. A body. A girl, crumpled behind the dumpster like discarded trash, her dark skin slick with rain and blood. Her arm was twisted at an unnatural angle, and her clothes were torn. A sketchbook lay half open beside her, its pages bleeding ink in the downpour. Junho's jaw tightened. He'd seen death before. He'd caused it. But something about this scene made his chest feel hollow. He knelt down and turned her over gently. Her face was young, maybe early 20s, with features that spoke of somewhere far from Korea. African, he thought. Her breathing was shallow, desperate. She was alive, but barely. Her eyes fluttered open for just a second, unfocused and terrified. "Help," she whispered in broken Korean before her head rolled back. Junho scooped her up without hesitation, her small frame light in his arms. He moved quickly through the back entrance, past his security team who immediately straightened at the sight of their boss carrying a bleeding woman. "Clear the private room. Now," he commanded, his voice like ice. "Get Dr. Kong. Tell no one." They scattered like shadows. Inside his private quarters above the club, Junho laid her on the leather couch. The sketchbook was still clutched in her hand. He carefully pried it loose and set it on the table beside her. Blood stained the cover. Dr. Kong arrived within minutes, a nervous man who'd patched up more criminals than hospital patients. He worked quickly, asking no questions. That was the arrangement. "She's lucky," the doctor said after 30 minutes of work. "Bruised ribs, dislocated shoulder, minor concussion. Someone beat her badly, but nothing's broken that won't heal. She needs rest and antibiotics. Will she wake up? In a few hours, probably. But she'll be in pain." Junho nodded once. "Leave the medication. Go." When the doctor left, Junho sat in the armchair across from the couch and studied the girl. Her hair was in braids, some torn loose from whatever violence she'd endured. Her clothes suggested she'd been running for a while, dirt and blood mixing with the rain stains. He picked up the sketchbook and opened it carefully. The pages were filled with vibrant drawings. Murals, street art, portraits of people laughing and dancing. The colors exploded off the paper despite the rain damage. There were Korean words mixed with English, practice phrases like someone learning a new language. On the last page, she'd drawn a girl surrounded by shadows, but the girl herself was made of light. Junho closed the book and set it down. In the criminal underworld of Busan, Seo Junho was known by a different name. They called him the Ghost. He appeared when you least expected it, dealt with problems that others couldn't solve, and vanished without a trace. Club owners paid him for protection. Smugglers paid him to look the other way. Politicians paid him to make scandals disappear. He'd killed his first man at 19. By 25, he owned half the nightlife district. By 30, he was untouchable. People feared him because fear was more reliable than loyalty. But as he sat watching this stranger breathe, something unfamiliar twisted in his chest. He couldn't name it. Didn't want to. The girl stirred around midnight. Junho had been reviewing security footage on his laptop when he heard her gasp. He closed the computer and stood, moving to the couch but maintaining distance. Her eyes snapped open, wild with panic. She tried to sit up and immediately cried out, clutching her shoulder. "Don't move," Junho said quietly in Korean. She froze, her eyes finding him in the dim light. Terror flooded her face. "English," he tried, his accent heavy but clear. She nodded slowly, her whole body trembling. "You're safe here," he continued in English. "I found you in the alley. A doctor treated your injuries. No one will hurt you." "Who are you?" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "Someone who doesn't like seeing people beaten and left for dead behind my property." She looked around the room, taking in the expensive furniture, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the carefully curated emptiness of a man who trusted nothing. "Where am I?" "My private quarters. Above the club." He gestured to a bottle of water on the table. You should drink. She hesitated, then reached for the water with her good arm. She drank like someone who'd been thirsty for days. What's your name? Junho asked. Nia. She lowered the bottle, studying him with eyes that were intelligent despite the fear. Nia Carter. I'm Junho. You're American? Nigerian American. She pulled the blanket someone had draped over her tighter. How long have I been here? 6 hours. I need to go. She tried to stand, but her legs gave out immediately. Junho caught her before she hit the floor, his grip firm but careful around her injuries. You can barely walk. I don't have a choice. There was desperation in her voice now, panic rising. They'll be looking for me. If they find me here, they'll kill you too. Let them try. Something in his tone made her look up at him. For a moment, their faces were inches apart, and he could see the exact shade of brown in her eyes, could feel her breath against his jaw. He helped her back to the couch, then stepped away. Tell me who did this to you, he said. Nia was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of someone who'd told this story too many times in her head. I came to Korea 6 months ago. There was this cultural exchange program for artists. I was so excited, you know. I'd never been to Asia. They promised studio space, materials, opportunities to showcase our work. She laughed bitterly. It was all bullshit. The company that sponsored us, they took our passports as soon as we landed. Said it was for safekeeping. Then they put us to work in their factories. Textile manufacturing. 16-hour days. No pay. Junho's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists. There were 8 of us, Nia continued. All women, all artists. They kept us in a dormitory with locks on the outside. I tried to report it, but they had connections with the local police. One of the other girls, she tried to run. They brought her back and beat her in front of everyone as a warning. So you ran anyway. I couldn't stay. I was going insane in there. So 3 weeks ago, I waited until the night guard fell asleep, and I climbed out a bathroom window. I've been living on the streets ever since, hiding. Your Korean is good, Junho observed. A small smile touched her lips. I studied for 2 years before coming. Wanted to understand the culture, you know? Wanted to do it right. The smile faded. Fat lot of good it did me. You were painting, Junho said. When they found you. Under the bridge near the pier. She looked surprised. How did you know? He pointed to her hands. They were stained with spray paint, the colors still visible under her fingernails. It helps me think, Nia said quietly. Helps me feel like I'm still human, not just running and hiding all the time. But someone must have reported me. 3 men showed up. They had a picture of me on their phones. I tried to run, but they were faster. They said Mr. Cho wanted his property back. Mr. Cho Sang-woo? Nia nodded. You know him? Junho's face was carved from stone. I know of him. He runs a labor trafficking ring in the Eastern District. I've heard rumors about the factories. You've heard rumors, and you didn't do anything? There was accusation in her voice, anger cutting through the fear. Junho met her gaze steadily. My business is protection and information, not justice. I stay in my territory. Cho stays in his. That's how this city works. That's how innocent people get hurt. Yes, he agreed simply. It is. Nia looked away, her jaw tight. I need to leave Korea. But I don't have my passport, I don't have money, and I can't go to the embassy because Cho's people are watching it. I'm trapped. Not anymore. Junho pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke in rapid Korean, too fast for Nia to follow. When he hung up, he looked at her. My men are gathering information on Cho's operation. Location of your passport, security weaknesses, personnel schedules. By morning, I'll have a plan. Why are you helping me? It was a fair question. Junho didn't have a good answer. He'd spent 15 years building walls around himself, learning that emotion was weakness and attachment was liability. The ghost didn't help people. The ghost solved problems and collected debts. But when he'd found her in that alley, bleeding and broken with her art scattered in the rain, something had cracked in those walls. Because you paint light in the darkness, he said finally. And this city needs that more than it needs another ghost. Over the next 3 days, Nia stayed in Junho's private quarters while she healed. He assigned 2 of his most trusted men to guard the door at all times. She was safe here, in the heart of the ghost's territory. No one would dare touch her. But safety came with isolation. Nia couldn't leave, couldn't see sunlight beyond the windows. She grew restless, pacing the room despite her injuries, sketching frantically in a new sketchbook Junho had someone buy for her. He watched her sometimes, standing in the doorway when she didn't notice. She drew with fierce concentration, her whole body engaged in the act of creation. She drew the city outside the window, the people on the streets below, memories of home. She never drew what happened to her. That, she kept locked away. On the third evening, Junho returned to find her standing by the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "I brought food," he said, setting down containers of Korean fried chicken and rice. "I'm not hungry. You need to eat. What I need is to stop feeling like a prisoner again." She turned to face him, and he could see the frustration burning in her eyes. "I know you're protecting me. I'm grateful, really. But I can't just sit here doing nothing while you plan some kind of operation. Let me help. You're recovering from a beating. You help by staying safe. I'm going crazy in here, Junho." She took a step toward him. "Please, let me do something. Anything." He studied her for a long moment, weighing risks and benefits the way he always did. Then he made a decision that surprised even him. "Can you paint a mural? A large one?" Her eyes lit up. "Yes, of course. What?" "The main floor of the club. The wall behind the bar. It's been empty for 3 years. I've never known what to put there." He paused. "Paint something that matters to you. Whatever you want. It'll give you purpose, and it'll keep you close where I can protect you." Nia's smile was like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "Really? You'd let me do that?" "On one condition. You paint at night when the club is closed. My men will be with you at all times. No exceptions. Deal." Watching her work was like watching magic. Nia transformed the blank wall into an explosion of color and life over the course of a week. She painted the story of migration, of dreams that led people across oceans, of communities built in foreign lands. She painted Korean architecture blending with African patterns, traditional hanbok merging with Nigerian fabrics. At the center, she painted a woman dancing, half her body in shadow and half in light, neither fully one thing or another, but beautiful in her duality. Junho found himself spending more time in the club after hours, ostensibly checking security and reviewing the day's receipts, but really just watching her create. She worked with music playing from her phone, Afrobeats and K-pop and American R&B all mixed together, sometimes humming along, sometimes explaining her artistic choices even though he didn't ask. "This part here," she said one night, pointing to a section where gold leaf caught the light, making it shimmer and glow. "This represents hope. The thing you carry with you even when everything else is stripped away. Your passport, your money, your dignity. They can take all of that. But they can't take what you carry inside unless you let them." "Is that what you carried?" Junho asked, standing at the base of her ladder, holding her paint supplies like an assistant. "When you ran." "Hope." Nia climbed down from her ladder and faced him, paint smudged across her cheek and forehead, her braids tied back with a scarf, exhaustion and satisfaction radiating from her in equal measure. "I carried this." She touched her chest, right over her heart. "The belief that I deserved better than what they were giving me, that I was more than what they tried to make me, that my life and my art and my dreams mattered. Even if I died in that alley, even if no one ever knew my name, I would die knowing I fought for myself. That I didn't just accept their version of who I was supposed to be." "You are," Junho said, his voice low and certain. "More than what they tried to make you." Something shifted in the air between them, electricity crackling in the space. Nia set down her brush and walked closer, close enough that he could see the different shades of brown in her eyes, could smell the paint and coffee and something uniquely her. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Yes." "Why do they call you the ghost?" Junho had been asked this question before, usually by people trying to flatter him or intimidate him or figure out his weaknesses. But from Nia, it felt different. Like she genuinely wanted to understand the man behind the legend, the human underneath the mythology. "Because I've learned to move through this world without leaving traces," he said. "No attachments, no weaknesses, no emotional connections that can be exploited. I appear when needed, I solve the problem, I disappear. That's how you survive in my line of work. That's how you build an empire and keep it." "Sounds lonely." Loneliness is better than betrayal. Loneliness is better than watching someone you love die because you weren't strong enough to protect them. Is it though? Nia tilted her head, studying him the way she might study a subject before painting it, seeing past the surface to something deeper. Because from where I'm standing, you've got money and power and fear and respect, but I haven't seen you smile once. Not really smile. Not the kind that reaches your eyes and makes them light up. You've built this empire, but what are you building it for? Who are you protecting if you won't let anyone close? I have nothing to smile about. Then you're not looking hard enough. She reached up and touched his face, her hand gentle against his jaw. You saved my life. You're planning to free 8 women from slavery. You're giving me space to create art in your club. You're trying to honor your sister's memory. Those are things worth smiling about. Before he could respond, she turned back to her mural, climbing the ladder again. But Junho stood there for a long moment, her touch still burning on his skin, something in his chest cracking open after years of being sealed shut. The plan was set for 3 days later. Junho would create a distraction at one of Cho's warehouses. A fire, nothing that would hurt anyone, just enough chaos to pull security away from the main office. While that happened, Minjun would infiltrate the office with a team of 3 and retrieve Nia's passport along with documents on the other trafficked women and evidence of Cho's connections to corrupt officials. Nia was to stay at the club under heavy guard until it was done. She agreed, but Junho could see the worry eating at her. She barely slept, barely ate. Her mural was finished, a masterpiece that had his regular customers staring in awe, but she kept adding small details, unable to stop working, unable to sit still. You should rest, Junho told her the night before the operation, finding her at 3 in the morning adding tiny stars to the painted sky. I can't. Her voice was tight with anxiety. I keep thinking about the other girls. Amara, and Blessing, and Chioma. What if they get hurt because of this? What if Cho realizes what we're doing and moves them somewhere worse? What if he kills them to destroy evidence? We've accounted for that possibility. Minjun has contacts in the immigration office who are ready to move the moment we give the signal. Once we have the documents, the authorities will have no choice but to act, especially with evidence of official corruption. It'll be a scandal they can't bury. And you trust these authorities? After everything? After they ignored us when we tried to report what was happening? No, Junho admitted, his voice hard. I don't trust them at all, but I trust that public exposure will force their hand. Cho's operation works in shadows, relies on people looking the other way. We're about to turn on all the lights and point every camera in the city at him. He won't survive that kind of scrutiny. Nia wrapped her arms around herself, still staring at her mural. I'm scared. Fear is smart. It keeps you alert, keeps you alive. That's not comforting, Junho. I'm not trying to comfort you. I'm telling you the truth. He moved closer, standing beside her, both of them looking at her creation. But I'll tell you something else that's true. I will not let Cho take you. Do you understand? Whatever happens tomorrow, however this plays out, you are under my protection. That means something in this city. That means you're safer than you've been since you arrived in Korea. She looked up at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Trust, maybe. Or something deeper, something more dangerous that neither of them was ready to name. Why? She asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Why does this matter so much to you? I'm just one person. You're risking a war with Cho, risking your reputation and your territory agreements, and maybe your life. For what? For me. Junho had asked himself the same question 100 times over the past week. The logical answer was that Cho had operated in his city, had beaten someone and left them behind his property, and that was unacceptable. The strategic answer was that taking down a trafficking ring would earn him goodwill with authorities he could leverage later, would expand his influence while eliminating a competitor. But standing here with Nia looking at him like he might actually be good, like he might be worth believing in, he couldn't lie. Not to her. Not to himself. Because when I found you in that alley, he said, when I saw you bleeding with your art scattered in the rain, something woke up that I thought I'd killed a long time ago. Something human. Something that remembers what it's like to care whether people live or die, whether justice exists, whether the world can be better than it is. And I don't want to lose that again. I don't want to go back to being empty. Nia reached out and took his hand, her fingers small and paint-stained against his scarred knuckles, warm and alive. "Then don't," she whispered. "Don't lose it. Don't go back. Stay here with me in the light." They stood like that for a long moment, hands joined, looking at a mural about hope and home and finding beauty in broken places. The operation should have been simple. Get in, get the documents, get out. Junho had run more complicated schemes in his sleep, had orchestrated operations with dozens of moving parts that all clicked into place like clockwork. But at 2 in the morning, everything went wrong. Nia was in the club's private room, watching the security feeds with Junho and Dae-hyun when the comms went silent. Min-jun had been inside Cho's office for 12 minutes, had just confirmed he'd found the passports, and was downloading files from the computer. He should have been out by now, should have been running for the extraction point. But there was nothing, just static. "Something's wrong," Junho said, already moving toward the door, his hand going to the gun at his waist. "Wait, what's happening?" Nia stood, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Stay here. Lock the door after I leave. Don't open it for anyone but me or Dae-hyun. Understand? Junho. Promise me, Nia. Promise me you'll stay here." "I promise." He was gone before she could say anything else, moving like liquid shadow through the door. Nia locked the door as instructed, her hands shaking. She stared at the security monitors, watching Junho's remaining guards take defensive positions around the building, weapons appearing from concealed holsters. Whatever was happening, they were preparing for a fight. Dae-hyun stood by the door, his expression calm but alert, one hand on his gun. Then Nia heard it, a sound that didn't belong, shouldn't exist. Footsteps. In the hallway. Coming from a direction where there shouldn't be anyone, where the building was supposed to be empty. She backed away from the door, her eyes wide, looking for something, anything she could use as a weapon. Her phone was on the desk. She grabbed it and typed a message to Junho with shaking hands. "Someone's outside the door. Wrong direction. Help." Dae-hyun heard it too. He moved instantly, positioning himself between Nia and the door, his gun drawn and ready. "Get behind the desk," he whispered urgently. "Stay low." Nia dropped to the floor, crawling behind the heavy wooden desk, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. The door exploded inward. Not unlocked. Not picked. Exploded. The lock mechanism shattered by a controlled charge that filled the room with smoke and the acrid smell of explosives. 3 men rushed in, and Nia recognized one of them immediately. He'd been one of the guards at the factory, the one who'd smiled when they punished Amara, who'd taken pleasure in their fear. Dae-hyun fired twice, dropping the first man through the door. But the other 2 were already on him, professional and fast. There was a brutal, efficient fight, breaking bones, choking holds, the sound of a body hitting the floor. Then silence. "Found her," one of the men said into his radio, speaking Korean. "Cho's going to be pleased." Nia tried to run for the window, but they were faster. Hands grabbed her arms, wrenched them behind her back hard enough to make her scream. The shoulder that had been dislocated throbbed with agony. "No, let me go," she fought, kicking and twisting, but there were too many of them, too strong. Something cloth and chemical-smelling was pressed over her mouth and nose. Chloroform, she realized distantly. She tried to hold her breath, tried to twist away, but her vision was already blurring at the edges. The last thing she saw was Dae-hyun's body on the floor, blood pooling beneath him, and her finished mural on the security monitors, the woman dancing between light and shadow. Then darkness swallowed her whole, pulling her down into nothing. Junho found the broken door and empty room 4 minutes later. For minutes that might as well have been 4 lifetimes, for eternities, for forevers of failing to protect someone who trusted him. Dae-hyun was alive but unconscious, breathing shallow, a head wound bleeding freely. 2 other men were dead, one shot, one with his neck broken. His guard had fought hard, but not hard enough. On the floor, he found Nia's phone, the screen cracked but still showing her last message to him. And a message written in marker on the wall above the desk, crude and mocking. "We have what's ours. Come alone to the old fish cannery at dawn, or we start removing fingers. Then toes. Then other parts." Cho. Min-jun appeared beside him, bloodied but alive, breathing hard. Boss, it was a setup. They knew we were coming. They let us get inside, let us think we were succeeding. Then they hit us from 3 sides. I barely got out. Lost 2 men. Find them, Junho said quietly. His voice was calm, controlled, but Min Jun had worked for him long enough to recognize the rage beneath the surface. The kind of rage that burned cold instead of hot, that calculated and planned and destroyed. Find whoever sold us out and bring them to me. Alive. I want them to understand what betrayal costs. And the girl? Junho picked up Nia's phone, carefully gathering the pieces of cracked screen, and slipped it into his pocket like a talisman. On the desk, he saw her sketchbook, the new one he'd bought her. He picked it up and flipped through the pages. She'd drawn him, multiple times. Just his profile, standing at the window. His hands holding her paint supplies. His face when he thought no one was watching. An expression she'd captured that he'd never seen in a mirror. Something almost human, almost hopeful. On the last page, she'd written something in both English and Korean. To the ghost who taught me that even shadows can protect the light. Thank you for seeing me. Nia. Something in his chest cracked, then shattered completely. I'm going to get her back, he said, his voice deadly calm. And then I'm going to burn Cho's entire operation to the ground. Every factory, every warehouse, every connection, every ally. By the time I'm done, his name will be synonymous with destruction. Min Jun had seen the ghost work before. Had seen him dismantle operations, end lives, solve problems with cold efficiency and surgical precision. But he'd never seen this look in his boss's eyes. This wasn't business. This wasn't strategy. This was personal. This was war. You're going alone? Min Jun asked carefully. Boss, that's what he wants. He'll kill you and her both. No. Junho pulled out his phone and started making calls, his voice clipped and commanding. I'm going to war. And I'm bringing an army. Within 2 hours, Junho had assembled a team of 25 men. Not just his own crew, but specialists he'd worked with over the years. People who owed him favors. People who understood that when the ghost went hunting, you either helped or stayed far, far away. Former military, ex-police, enforcers from other organizations who respected his reputation. He also made 3 other calls. One to Kim Ji-won, a reporter at the Busan Gazette who'd been investigating labor trafficking for 3 years, who'd seen her stories buried by editors with connections to people like Cho. Be at the old fish cannery at dawn with cameras and a live stream, he told her. What you find there will end multiple careers and possibly change immigration policy. This is your Pulitzer. The second to Detective Park Min-soo in the Special Victims Unit, a man who'd been trying to build a case against Cho for 18 months but never had enough evidence. I'm about to hand you the biggest arrest of your career, Junho said. Be at the fish cannery at dawn with warrants and backup. Bring everyone. This ends tonight. The third call was to every major gang leader in Busan. The message was simple. Cho Sang-woo broke the rules. He attacked someone under my protection, in my territory. I'm making an example. Anyone who has a problem with that, show up at dawn and we'll discuss it. Anyone who wants to stay in business, stay home. No one showed up to defend Cho. The ghost's reputation was that solid. By the time the sun started to rise over Busan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Junho was ready. He'd armed himself with everything he needed. Guns, knives, information, leverage, and an ice-cold fury that made his hands steady and his mind clear. He arrived at the cannery alone, as instructed. The building was a rotting shell on the waterfront, broken windows like missing teeth, rusted metal and peeling paint, the smell of old fish and salt water and decay heavy in the air. Cho Sang-woo waited inside with a dozen armed men positioned around the space like sentries. And in the center of the room, tied to a chair with zip ties cutting into her wrists, was Nia. Her face was bruised worse than before, fresh blood on her lip and a cut above her eye that looked recent. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but her eyes were sharp and angry and alive. When she saw Junho, relief flooded her expression, followed immediately by fear, not for herself, but for him. The famous ghost, Cho said, stepping forward. He was a heavy-set man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit that clashed absurdly with the surroundings, trying to maintain dignity in a place that had none. You've caused me considerable trouble. Cost me time, money, personnel. All over this. He gestured dismissively at Nia. One girl. One worthless girl who's caused me nothing but problems since she arrived. You beat and kidnapped someone under my protection. Junho replied calmly, his voice flat and emotionless. You caused yourself trouble the moment you touched her. She's my property. I paid for her transport, her visa, her housing, her materials. She owes me $20,000. She signed a contract. She's mine until that debt is paid. She's not property. She's a person. And your contract is illegal and unenforceable. You know it. I know it. And soon everyone in Korea will know it. Cho laughed, the sound ugly and wet. Principles? From you? The ghost has principles now? That's rich. You're a criminal, Seo. You extort. You threaten. You've killed more people than I have. Don't pretend you're better than me. I never said I was better. I said she's under my protection, and you violated that. There's a difference. Cho circled Nia's chair, trailing a finger across her shoulder. She flinched, but didn't look away from Junho, keeping her eyes locked on his like a lifeline. You know, when I heard the ghost was sheltering one of my runaways, I couldn't believe it. But then I thought, maybe she's offering him something worth the trouble. Is that it? Is she warming your bed in exchange for protection? Is that why you care? Last chance, Junho said, his voice dropping to something deadly. Release her. Release all the women you're holding. Turn yourself into the authorities who are currently surrounding this building. Do that, and you live. You'll go to prison, but you'll live. Or what? Cho laughed again. You'll kill me? Here? In front of all my men? I don't think so. You're outnumbered and outgunned. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk away, forget you ever met this girl, and I'm going to teach her what happens to property that runs. Then I'm going to teach you what happens to people who interfere in my business. He pulled out a knife, the blade catching the early morning light. Nia's eyes went wide, but she didn't scream. She kept her gaze locked on Junho, and he saw the trust there, absolute and unshakable. The belief that he would save her, that he wouldn't let her down. He wouldn't. Actually, Junho said, checking his watch with deliberate casualness, here's what's going to happen. In approximately 30 seconds, the police are going to breach this building with warrants for your arrest on human trafficking charges, labor exploitation, document fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. In 60 seconds, reporters from 4 major news outlets are going to start filming and live streaming everything that happens here. Your operation is over, Cho. Your connections won't save you. Your money won't save you. Not this time. Cho's confidence wavered. You're bluffing. Am I? Junho smiled, and it was the coldest expression Nia had ever seen on a human face. You made a mistake, Cho. You thought I was just another gangster playing by the same rules as you. But I'm not. I'm the ghost. And when I decide someone needs to disappear, they disappear. Right on cue, the sound of sirens filled the air. Multiple sirens, from every direction. Car doors slamming. Shouted commands in Korean. Helicopters overhead. Cho's men looked at each other nervously, fingers tightening on weapons, eyes darting toward exits. Their boss had gone pale, sweat beading on his forehead. One more thing, Junho said, and his voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire space, penetrating every corner. You touched her. You made her bleed. You tried to break her spirit. You smiled while other women suffered. For that, there's a price that goes beyond prison. For that, I'm going to make sure everyone knows your name and your face and your crimes. Your children will grow up ashamed of you. Your wife will leave you. Your ancestors will curse your memory. You wanted to make people disappear? I'm going to make sure you're never forgotten. Never forgiven. That's what happens when you touch what's mine. He moved. What happened next would become legend in Busan's underworld. The story told and retold in bars and back rooms for years to come. The ghost, they would say, moved like his namesake, like smoke, like shadow, like death itself. One moment he was across the room. The next he was on Cho, the knife spinning away across the concrete floor before it could touch Nia's skin. Cho tried to fight back, but Junho was faster, stronger, fueled by rage that had been building for a week. He grabbed Cho by the throat and lifted him off the ground, squeezing until the older man's face turned purple. You don't touch her, Junho said, his voice deadly calm. You don't look at her. You don't breathe her name. Are we clear? Cho's men tried to intervene, raising weapons, moving to protect their boss. But Junho's team burst through the windows and doors simultaneously, a coordinated assault that turned the warehouse into controlled chaos. Flashbangs, smoke grenades, the sound of gunfire, rubber bullets. Junho had insisted, no lethal force unless absolutely necessary. But Junho wasn't interested in the fight. He dropped Cho and went straight to Nia, cutting through her bonds in 2 swift movements with a knife from his belt. She collapsed forward, and he caught her, his arms wrapping around her protectively, shielding her body with his. "I've got you," he murmured against her hair, his voice breaking for the first time. "You're safe. I've got you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I let them take you." She clung to him, shaking, her fingers digging into his jacket. "I knew you'd come. I never doubted. Not for 1 second. Always," he promised. "I'll always come for you." The police swarmed the building moments later, cameras flashing like lightning. They found Cho trying to run and tackled him to the ground, reading him his rights while he screamed about lawyers and connections. They found documents in his men's possession, passports, ledgers, evidence of dozens of victims, financial records that would unravel his entire network and implicate multiple officials. Detective Park looked at Junho with grudging respect. "You just handed me the case of my career." "I handed you justice," Junho corrected. "Make sure it sticks." "It will. With this evidence and the live coverage?" "He's done. They're all done." By noon, it was all over the news. Every channel, every website, trending on social media. The reporter, Kim Ji-won, had live-streamed the entire raid, the footage going viral. By evening, 3 government officials had resigned, 2 police captains were under investigation, and the immigration minister was holding a press conference promising reforms. By midnight, 8 women had been released from Cho's factories, given medical care and legal assistance, their passports returned, their debts forgiven by court order. Embassy officials from 4 African nations were coordinating their return home, or, for those who chose to stay, helping them secure proper work visas and protection. Nia watched it all unfold from Junho's apartment, her hand wrapped in ice, antibiotics in her system, exhaustion pulling at her bones, but unable to sleep. Unable to process that it was really over, that she was really safe. "It's over," she said quietly, staring at the news coverage on his massive television. "It's really over." "It's over," Junho confirmed. He sat beside her on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched, his presence solid and reassuring. "Your passport is being processed by the embassy with priority status. You'll have it by tomorrow. They're expediting your case, offering compensation. You can leave. Go home. Return to your family." "So I can leave?" "Yes." She turned to look at him, really look at him. There was a cut on his jaw from the fight, bruises forming on his knuckles, but his eyes were soft when they met hers. Human. Real. "What if I don't want to?" Junho had spent his entire adult life building walls, creating distance, becoming untouchable. Emotion was weakness. Attachment was liability. People you loved became targets. He'd learned that lesson young and hard, had paid for it with his sister's life. But sitting here with Nia, those walls felt like prison bars instead of protection. "You should go home," he said, his voice rough. "Return to your family. Your real life. Busan was supposed to be a dream, not a nightmare. You deserve to chase that dream somewhere safe, somewhere without men like Cho. Without men like me. What if I want to chase it here?" "Nia, I'm not saying forever," she interrupted, turning to face him fully. "I'm not saying I'm in love with you, or that we're going to ride off into the sunset together like some fairy tale. I'm saying I'm not ready to leave yet. I have unfinished business here. I want to finish what I started. I want to paint murals all over this city. I want to show that the nightmares don't get to win, that they don't get to define my story. I want to find the other women Cho trafficked and paint their stories if they'll let me. I want to turn my pain into something beautiful." She took his hand, her fingers small and paint-stained against his scarred knuckles. "And I want to see if the ghost can learn to be human again. If we can both heal together. Because I think you saved me that night, but I also think maybe I saved you a little too." Junho looked at their joined hands, at the contrast between them, her warmth and his coldness, her light and his shadows, her hope and his cynicism. Opposites that somehow fit. I don't know how to be what you need, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I've spent 15 years being empty, being cold, being a ghost. I don't know if I can change that. Neither do I, Nia said honestly. I don't know if I can ever fully trust people again after what Cho did to me. I don't know if I can sleep without nightmares or walk down the street without looking over my shoulder. We're both broken in different ways. But maybe we can figure it out together. Maybe broken people are exactly what each other needs. Someone who understands that healing isn't linear, that some scars never fully fade, but that doesn't mean we can't build something beautiful anyway. For the first time in 15 years, Seo Junho smiled. Really smiled. Not the cold, calculated expression he used in business. Not the predatory grin that made people fear him, but a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners, made him look younger, made him look almost like the person he might have been if life had been kinder. Okay, he said. Stay? For as long as you want. No pressure. No expectations. Just stay. Nia smiled back, tears running down her face. Happy tears this time. Relief tears. Okay, I'll stay. 3 months later, Nia stood on a ladder near Busan's famous Gamcheon culture village, adding the final touches to her latest mural. This one covered an entire building, 5 stories of vibrant color and life. A massive piece showing a community garden growing from concrete, roots breaking through barriers, flowers blooming in impossible places, different plants from different countries, all thriving together. Tourists stopped to take photos, dozens of them, sharing it on social media. Local news had covered it, calling her the artist who survived. The mayor had visited and declared it a cultural landmark, promising to commission more of her work throughout the city. International art magazines wanted interviews. Galleries wanted exhibitions. Other trafficking survivors wanted to meet her, to share their stories, to ask her to paint their experiences into something beautiful. But Nia wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about the man standing at the base of her ladder, holding her paint supplies, wearing casual clothes instead of his usual suits, looking up at her work with quiet pride. Junho had changed in small, significant ways. He smiled more, though still rarely in public. He'd started legitimate businesses, slowly distancing himself from the darker parts of his empire, using his connections for something other than profit. He'd used his influence to fund programs for immigrant workers, creating safe channels for people to report abuse, establishing a legal fund for victims of trafficking. He was trying to be better, trying to deserve the way she looked at him, trying to honor his sister's memory by actually keeping the promise he'd made so long ago. It was slow. It was hard. Some days he slipped back into old patterns, became cold and distant. Some days Nia woke up screaming from nightmares, unable to distinguish dream from reality. But they were doing it together, helping each other heal, reminding each other that broken didn't mean worthless. What do you think? She called down to him, wiping paint from her hands. I think you paint light in the darkness, he said, echoing his words from that first week. Just like I knew you would. She climbed down and stood beside him, both of them looking up at her creation, at the story of survival and hope and community thriving despite everything working against it. You know what this is? She asked. What? This is hope. Real hope. The kind that survives everything they try to do to kill it. The kind that grows back stronger every time it's cut down. She leaned against his shoulder, fitting perfectly under his arm. Thank you for believing in mine when I couldn't. Thank you for making me remember I had some too. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulling her close, and pressed a kiss to her temple. 3 months ago, he wouldn't have been able to do that. Wouldn't have let himself be vulnerable enough for public affection. But Nia was teaching him that vulnerability wasn't the same as weakness. That sometimes the bravest thing was letting people see you care. They stood there as the sun set over Busan, painting the sky in colors as vibrant as Nia's murals, burning oranges and deep purples and brilliant pinks. A ghost and an artist. Darkness and light. Shadow and color. 2 broken people learning together that sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the most broken places. I love you, Nia said suddenly, the words simple and honest. I don't know when it happened or how, but I do. I love you, and I'm not going anywhere. Junho was quiet for a long moment, processing the words, the weight of them. the responsibility of them. Then he turned her to face him, cupping her face in his hands, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "I love you too," he said, and the words felt foreign on his tongue, rusty from disuse, but true. So true it hurt. "You brought me back to life, Nia Carter. You made me remember what it means to be human. And I promise I'll spend every day trying to deserve that gift." She kissed him then, there in the fading light with tourists watching and cameras clicking, and neither of them cared. Let the world see. Let them know that the ghost had found something worth being visible for. When they finally pulled apart, Nia was grinning. So what now? Now? Junho smiled, that real smile she loved, the one that made his eyes light up. "Now we keep building. Keep healing. Keep painting light in the darkness. Together." "Together," she agreed. And hand in hand, the ghost and the artist walked through the streets of Busan as the city lit up around them. Neon signs and street lamps and the warm glow from restaurant windows. A city full of stories and second chances and the promise that tomorrow could be better than today. They'd both been broken. Both were lost. Both were trapped in their own kind of darkness. But they'd found each other. And sometimes, that was enough to start building something new. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments which scene grabbed you the most. Should I create more stories like this? Let me know. And don't forget to like this video. It really helps the channel grow. Thanks for watching until the end. You're the real ones. ***.